With the holidays coming up, I imagine many of you sitting at dinner parties, surrounded by your friends and family. The laughter is warm, the food is great, and you cherish this time with your loved ones. However, you are not able to be completely present to them. You see, your partner is there, and they are occupying a large amount of your mind. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. And maybe they're charming and generous and helpful at this dinner party, complimenting the host on the meal, cracking jokes that make everyone laugh, and even offering to help clean up, even insisting that they help to clean up. Someone leans over to you and even whispers, "You're so lucky to have them." Well, you force a smile, you nod, and you take a sip of your drink to hide the lump that is forming in your throat. As you watch this environment, your stomach twists, your heart struggles to beat. You know that the person that everyone is admiring is not the same person that you live with behind closed doors. Because once the party ends, the mask will slip. The compliments will turn into subtle digs. The warmth will become cold silence. And you will wonder for the 100th time if you are the one that's broken. Because what your friends and family don't see is what happens when you get home. Maybe not even when you get home. Maybe it already starts in the car. They don't see the accusations, the sharp words, the gaslighting, the harsh silence. They don't see the smile vanish into thin air and the eyes become laser focused. "Why did you interrupt me when I was talking earlier? You made me look stupid. I can't believe you would do that." You try to explain, but they wave you off, muttering something about how you always ruin things. Later, you lie awake at night, replaying the whole evening in your mind. Did I actually interrupt? Did I embarrass them? I was just trying to join the conversation. I should have just kept my mouth shut. I know better than that. Meanwhile, your, quote, wonderful partner sleeps soundly beside you, while you lay awake, overwhelmed with self-doubt and self-blame. This is the reality of life with a covert narcissist. Their abuse is so subtle, so insidious, and nearly impossible for outsiders to see. But for their partners, it's an endless, isolating nightmare. People who have survived this often feel invisible, dismissed, and doubted when sharing their experiences with others. And today we are diving into what survivors wish people understood and how we can better support those who have endured this hidden abuse. So let's unmask this truth together. A survivor of covert narcissism has experienced this over and over and over for years and decades. No matter what they have tried, how much they have changed, and how much work they've done to keep peace with this partner. Trying to make them feel loved, trying to make them feel cared for and appreciated, but none of it matters. They are still met repeatedly with blame, accusations, criticisms, and personal attack. Over time, as a survivor of this, you become indifferent, hiding within, no longer joining conversations, trying to stay out of the way as much as possible. While you've always thoroughly enjoyed the holidays and time with family and friends, you now just survive these times. The gleam long gone from your eyes, the smile plastered on your face, hoping that no one notices the facade. Doing your best to pretend. Your loved ones may ask if you're okay, noticing that something is off. But you fake it, and you give some lame excuse about being busy lately and tired. How can you possibly explain what is truly going on. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. This is a podcast where we expose hidden truths and give voice to the survivors of covert narcissistic abuse. I'm Renee Swanson, your host, but I'm here to unpack this topic that is difficult and necessary. Today's episode is about validation. What survivors wish more people understood, and why the world needs to do a better job in listening, believing, and supporting those who are going through this invisible abuse. What the world is calling covert narcissism, and what I have called covert narcissism, has other names. Vulnerable narcissism, perhaps a more accurate name. Introverted narcissism, passive-aggressive narcissism, closet narcissism, and others. And I'll bring you an episode soon that addresses these different names and different approaches. I think that would be useful to us. But for now, I'm going to stick with the name covert narcissism. You see, this is a stealthy form of narcissistic abuse, unlike the flashy, grandiose version who seek the spotlight. The covert narcissist thrives in the shadows. They often appear humble, shy, self-deprecating, but behind closed doors, their behavior is deeply manipulative and emotionally abusive. Here's the kicker. Covert narcissists are masters of perception. In public, they appear kind, generous, and even saintly, giving up their chair for someone else, jumping up to help when someone drops stuff, cleaning up the papers and trash after a meeting. But at home, they create a toxic environment filled with subtle gaslighting, blame shifting, and emotional neglect. Their abuse is insidious, leaving their partners questioning their own reality. In my Facebook group, Covert Narcissism Group, I recently asked survivors of this abuse what they wish more people understood. And here are some very powerful insights from that post. One is, abuse does not have to be physical to be real. Many survivors in these stories that I just presented, they feel dismissed because there's no visible scars, no visible wounds. Covert narcissists manipulate with words, silence, and emotional withdrawal. Just because someone isn't hitting you does not mean it's not abuse. Another survivor said they want people to know that this is actual abuse. Just because he didn't hit me doesn't mean it's not abuse. And their ability to twist stories and turn people against you. They are masters of manipulation. And another quote, the insidious behavior when they show the world, including total strangers, their kindness, their generosity, but they show their most precious loved ones the monster behind the mask. Another thing that survivors of covert narcissistic abuse wish that more people understood is that the person you see is not the person we live with. Survivors constantly face disbelief because the abuser wears a mask in public. They might be the perfect coworker, neighbor, or friend, but at home, it's a different story. This duality is one of the most painful parts of covert narcissistic abuse. Here's a quote from my group, that the person they see at work and socially is not the husband and father we see and experience at home. That your opinion of my difficult decision does not matter. That the perfect guy you see has left his kids with trauma. And that social media posts are not reality. Here's another quote, that other people just don't see it. It is appropriately named because people will argue with you and defend the most awful covert narcissist with true conviction that this is a wonderful person, that this person is a saint, and that you are wrong. It is so painful to be surrounded by people telling you that you have it all wrong. If I can make people understand one thing, it's that you do not know what goes on behind closed doors. So stop and listen and believe. Another quote on this same post. to put an emphasis on the word covert. That they could say something to you in front of someone and send a text and it be abusive because after living in their twisted reality, you know what was really intended. But to others looking on, it appears to be a normal, innocent statement. Remember, they are masters of perception. So what do we do in all of this? What do we, as people who are trying to support others who are living in this? One of the things that gets thrown up in this podcast post is stop asking for proof. Survivors are often told, well, that doesn't sound like them, or they're asked to provide evidence of the abuse. This is so incredibly hard to do because it's so subtle and so insidious. Covert narcissists are experts at crafting plausible deniability. Their manipulations being so subtle that it often looks like innocent remarks to the outsiders. One of the quotes from the post is, I just wish people were less gullible. A nice smile and some sweet words are not enough. Another statement from a survivor of covert narcissistic abuse is, we need validation, not dismissal. Survivors frequently feel invalidated when friends or family downplay their experiences or change the subject when the topic becomes uncomfortable. Watching a survivor cry is not a cue to stop listening. It's an opportunity to acknowledge their strength and their pain. One of the quotes from the post is, the most immediate need is for people to believe you when you try to tell them what it is like for you in the relationship. Many people do not really listen. Rather, they trivialize all the things that you tell them. And I know that people mean well when they say, well, they didn't mean it that way. Maybe you're looking at this wrong. But all of that invalidates the abuse that these people are going through. I wish more people were aware and realized how devastating it is to live with and how crazy it makes you feel. Because I feel invisible. These are the words of another survivor of this. I feel I have lived a secret, hidden life. I feel like it is wrong and against my very nature, yet I don't know what else to do. When I try to explain it, people dismiss me and ignore me. It makes me feel uncomfortable, and they don't want to believe that it's true. Guess what? I didn't want to believe it was true either. The fact that it's hidden abuse, death by 1,000 cuts, is so very accurate. Living with a covert narcissist is like enduring a death by 1,000 bee stings. Each small insult, dismissive comment, or gaslighting moment chips away at your confidence and sanity. Survivors describe feeling invisible as though they've lived a hidden life that no one believes or understands. No one sees them. Survivors are not just harmed then by the narcissist. They are re-traumatized by the reactions of others. Victim blaming, disbelief, and trivialization feel like being hit with shrapnel a second time. So how can you support someone who has endured covert narcissistic abuse? Believe them. Believe what they're telling you. You're not living behind their closed doors. So even if the person that they are describing does not match your version of that person, trust their lived experience. This abuse happens behind closed doors. Validate their strength. Survivors need to hear that their pain is real and that they are not weak for being affected by it. Say things like, hey, you've been through so much and you're doing amazing. You're so strong and resourceful to have made it this far. I'm here for you in any way that you need. Do not dismiss their struggles. Survivors are often told to move on, or they're judged for their decisions. Instead, acknowledge them. Remember that they have fought hard to survive and rebuild. Avoid being a flying monkey. Covert narcissists are manipulative enough to recruit others to do their bidding, often spreading their lies and playing the victim. So be cautious of taking sides without fully understanding the context. If there's one takeaway from today's episode, it's this. Covert narcissism thrives in secrecy, but survivors do not have to suffer in silence. Believe them. validate their pain, and honor their resilience. To every survivor listening right now, you are strong. You are capable. You are resourceful. And most importantly, you are not alone. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this episode resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We are surrounded by people who are dealing with this, who are facing covert narcissistic abuse. Share it with them. We are surrounded by people who don't understand it, who are trying to support, but they don't know how. Share it with them. Together, we can break the silence and create a world that listens, believes, and supports survivors of covert narcissistic abuse. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. If you are struggling with covert narcissism in your life, I help people to heal from covert narcissistic abuse. If you are struggling with the isolation, the self-doubt, and the obsessive thinking, then this is the program for you. I offer both group and individual options. This is live, personalized coaching that is specific to covert narcissism. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at my website, covertnarcissism.com. I'm not a therapist and you are not a victim. I am a coach and you are a survivor. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.